You probably know that sentences are an important part of communication, but it's the mark we use to end the sentence that indicates its tone.
So while the words are telling us what is said, it's the final punctuation mark that tells us how it's said.
The three marks we can use to end a sentence are the period, the question mark, and the exclamation point. Let's take a closer look at each one.
Section A, the period.
Ah, the period. Like a cup of hot cocoa in Grandma's feather bed, the period is a punctuation mark we're all comfortable and familiar with. It's easy to make, and it seems to say, go ahead, use me. Most of us already know that the period is just a dot that marks the end of a plain old everyday run-of-the-mill sentence, like some of these.
Look at how Mama Napoli checks to see if the pasta is done. Ah, she throws the spaghetti against a smooth surface. If the noodles stick, they're done.
Notice how these sentences are all regular commands and statements. Commands make a request or tell the listener to do something. Like, look at how Mama Napoli checks to see if the pasta's done. Statements simply state that something is true. Like, she throws the spaghetti against a smooth surface, and if the noodles stick, they are done. See, statements and commands, nothing fancy here.
So, as you can see, the period is kind of like a stop sign. It tells the reader, hey reader, stop, I've just finished my point. Okay, you can go on now. It lets your brain take a breath before moving on to the next sentence. But periods can do more than just end sentences.
Another great thing a period can do is abbreviate a long word or phrase into a shorter form that's easier to write. Mr. becomes MR period. Department becomes DEPT period. And the United Arab Emirates becomes U period A period E period. Imagine the time you save every year by using abbreviations. At least a couple of minutes. And you could use that time to write a haiku or two. Hey, that rhymes. A haiku or two.
The important thing to remember when you're writing an abbreviation is that you can only do it with words that everyone knows the abbreviations for. The words we just looked at all have standard abbreviations we all recognize. Mr., we've all used that one. But you can't abbreviate anti-disestablishmentarianism into ANT period, or even ANTDIS period, because the word's not used often enough to have a standard abbreviation. Besides, if you have the chutzpah to use anti-disestablishmentarianism in a paper, go ahead and write it out.
Some abbreviations like SCUBA, DNA, and FBI are written without a period. These are usually monograms or acronyms that have been used so often and for so long that the periods are now left off. The same thing's true for words like flu and memo, which are really just abbreviations for influenza and memorandum. They've been around for so long that they've become words of their own.
Now, here's a tricky punctuation thing for you. What if the last word in your sentence is an abbreviation? Well, when that happens, one period can be used to end both the abbreviation and the sentence. Suppose we wanted to write,
Grandma loves knitting, baking, rugby, etc. We use only one period, not two. In this sentence, the period is serving two purposes, to abbreviate etc. and to end our sentence.
You were right, Bob. These periods are amazing.
Amazingly useful, Susie. Periods are the ultimate end mark. They end statements and commands and can even shorten those unsightly long words into beautiful abbreviations.
Periods end sentences and abbreviations? It's crazy.
Crazy like a fox! And you can put them in the freezer and they'll keep your drink cool without watering it down. Huh? How do you like that, people, huh? Give it up.
Section B, the question mark. What were you doing with the marshmallows on July 25th?
I don't know. I told you I don't remember anything.
Exactly what secrets did the marshmallows tell you?
I told you I don't remember anything about any marshmallows.
Can you tell me what's an interrogative sentence?
Sure. Interrogative sentences ask a question, and to end an interrogative sentence like, what were you doing with marshmallows on July 25th, or exactly what secrets did the marshmallows tell you, we use a question mark.
The question mark. There's really nothing like it. Suppose you want to write,
Who put the bop in the bop-she-bop-she-bop? Since we're asking a question who, we use a big old question mark.
You're probably thinking, yeah, question marks are those things that come after questions, like who put the bop in the bop, she bop, she bop. But it's not always that easy to tell whether or not a sentence is really a question.
Look at the sentence, I wonder who put the bop in the bop, she bop, she bop. It looks like a question because the writer is looking for a piece of information.
But if you look closely, you'll see that the writer isn't really asking you a question. They're simply making a statement about what they wonder about something. And for a statement like this, a plain old period will do.
In fact, there's only one occasion when it's okay to use a question mark at the end of a statement. And that's when you want to show disbelief or sarcasm.
So we could write, Eli Whitney put the bop in the bop, she bop, she bop? No, he invented the cotton gin. Since we're showing disbelief at the notion that Eli's responsible for the bop, the question mark is okay here, especially since we pointed out our disbelief in the following sentence. No, he invented the cotton gin.
So question marks are great ways to end sentences if you're asking a question or showing sarcasm or disbelief. But question marks aren't just for the end of the sentence anymore. There's another neat thing we can do with question marks. Suppose we write, when Orville went on safari, did he forget his bug spray, camera, and extra underwear?
Here we've got ourselves a simple, straightforward question. But if we want to put the emphasis on the items in our list, we can put a question mark after each item. That gives us, when Orville went on a safari, did he forget his bug spray, camera, extra underwear? Now we focus our attention on the things Orville should have brought without getting all wrapped up in his trip.
Notice how we didn't capitalize the first letter of each of the items in the list. When you use question marks to itemize things in a list, whether or not you capitalize these little question babies is completely up to you. Make them all capital or make them all lowercase. Both are right, just be consistent.
So now we know we end a plain old statement or command with a period, and a question with a question mark. Now, suppose we want to add an element of excitement to our sentence.
Section C, the exclamation point.
An exclamation point looks like this, just a line and a dot. By using it, we can take the simplest sentence, or even just a word, and pack it full of punch. Think of the exclamation point more as a stylistic mark than one that you either must or must not use. There's no wrong or right place to use one, it's totally up to the writer. Use it when you want to show excitement or rage, anything with a lot of emotion.
B21.
Miss, H14.
You sank my battle boat.
I love this game.
Exclamation points jazz things up.
B21.
Miss, H14.
You sank my battle boat.
I love this game! Yeah!
Oh! Okay, we know exclamation points are great, awesome, and great tools for us to use. But as you can see, too many exclamation points can be annoying, especially in formal writing. So you should use them only when it's absolutely necessary.
Sometimes writers will try to use an exclamation point to take a boring, unimaginative phrase or sentence and jazz it up. But that's like adding curry powder to oatmeal. You'll probably find that you're better off using spicier, sassier words to begin with and let them speak for themselves. Suppose we write,
Cheryl is so happy. She won a free cruise. If Cheryl is really excited about this free cruise, wouldn't you say she's more than happy? I mean, she's probably happy when she has a pizza for dinner. When you win a cruise, you're delighted, thrilled, or ecstatic. Yes, ecstatic. Now that's sussy. Let's use that.
Cheryl was ecstatic about winning the free cruise. Now, the sentence is much more specific than it was before. If we want to, we can still use an exclamation point, especially since now our sentence has enough zing to sustain it. But it probably looks just fine with a plain old period.
That's it for exclamation points. Now let's review what we know about all the end marks. Want to? Come on, it'll be fun.
Periods go at the end of regular sentences like statements and commands. They can also be used to abbreviate words like Mr. that have a common abbreviated form that everybody knows. And when an abbreviation comes at the end of a sentence, you don't need to use two periods. The same period ends the abbreviated word and the sentence.
Question marks are used to end interrogative sentences, or sentences which ask a question. They can also be used with other kinds of sentences to show sarcasm or disbelief. However, we don't use question marks to end statements that begin with "I wonder." And while we usually just use one question mark at the end of a sentence, we can use several to itemize things in a list at the end of a question, which pulls the reader's attention away from the sentence itself and highlights the items in the list.
The exclamation point is a stylistic punctuation mark that's used to end sentences that are meant to show extreme emotion, like excitement, terror, or rage. While it's up to the writer whether or not to use an exclamation point, too many can be annoying for the reader, especially when the words in a sentence aren't strong enough to support one. So, it's usually best to use them sparingly.